on Indian economy, practical ways to deal with it. COVID-19 continues to make the headlines across the world. An alarming number of cases have been reported around the world. As on Friday evening, more than 97 lakh cases were reported and around 5 lakhs people were dead. In India, reported more than 5 lakhs cases and with more than 15,000 dead. This public health emergency has resulted in an economic slowdown at global level. This has disrupted the cycle of production, distribution, and up to some extent consumption. This has played a havoc in global financial market. In India too, the story is not different. The continuous lockdown, quarantine pushed the Indian economy across the industry. The government of India, corporate houses, and citizens at individual level trying their level best to tackle this issue. However, despite the Unlock 01, the questions that remain unanswered are, is this crisis a short-term issue or it is going to last for a long period? Are the means and measures taken to fight this crisis are enough or we need to do more? Is saving lives or saving the livelihood important? How much and how fast and we can recover from this crisis? Let us explore to these questions through experts' eye. I am SM Wasiullah. I am welcoming you all to the panel discussion, and I am joined by Dr. Aditya Srinivas, CEO and Chief Economist of Bombay Stock Exchange Brokers Forum. He holds a PhD in economics. He is an author and a passionate speaker. He has given more than 2,000 lectures and addressed around 65,000 people on financial literacy. I am also joined with Dr. T. Rangarajan, professor, and IIM Ahmedabad alumnus. He is management consultant, professor, and visiting professor at IIM Kozhikode. He is entrepreneur himself, and he also holds PhD in management. I am also joined by Dr. Shariq Nisar, professor at Rizvi Institute of Management. He is research consultant at BSc Institute. He sits on various advisory boards of financial institutions in India. He also holds PhD in economics. On behalf of RIFA Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and on behalf of all the participants, I would like to welcome our guest speakers on the platform, panelists. So let us start with Dr. T. Rangarajan sir. So when you see the impact of COVID-19 on Indian economy, what the overview you get of this topic? Please, T. Rangarajan sir.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rangarajan. Okay. Thanks, Vasi. I'll just take about 2 minutes to say something, but this will be in Tamil. It's just a very short poem of 91 words. Please listen to it, and then I'll also translate it for you. This, I think, is the essence of what I'm going to say during this 90 minutes interaction with all of you. Okay? Here it goes. This was sent by one of my friends, and it says, Ooranangu kalam mattumalla, uyirulla kalam varai, inda eliya puridal vendum. That means not only during the lockdowns, but also till as long as you are alive, you must keep this understanding with you and act accordingly. In the iyarkai, in the prapanjam, manal, malaygal, neerveezhigal, aaru, kulangal, erigal, marangal, பூஞ்சோலைகள், காடுகள், பறவைகள், விலங்குகள், எண்ணிலடங்கா ஜீவராசிகள், பஞ்சபூதங்கள் எல்லாவற்றையும் உள்ளவாறு ரசிக்கிறோம், மகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறோம், கொண்டாடுகிறோம். ஆனால் வாழ்வின் சில சூழ்நிலைகளை மட்டும் மாற்ற வேண்டும் என்று அதனை துரத்தி கலைத்து நாம் அடைந்த இடம் இதுதான் என்பதை இப்பொழுதாவது உணர்ந்தோமா? நமது விருப்பு வெறுப்பினால் மகிழ்ச்சியையும் நிம்மதியையும் துளைத்து விடுகிறோம். விருப்பு வெறுப்புக்கு அப்பால் வாழ பழகினால் உலகின் யதார்த்த வாழ்வு என்ன என்பதை ஆழ்ந்து புரிதலோடு வாழ பழகினோமானால் மட்டுமே ஆனந்தத்தில் திளைக்க முடியும் என்ற எளிய உண்மையை உலகமே அடங்கியிருக்கும் இந்த ஊரடங்கு நமக்கு உணர்த்தி இருக்கும். ஊரடங்கு காலம் மட்டுமல்ல, உயிருள்ள காலம் வரை இந்த எளிய புரிதல் வேண்டும். Essence is, we see a lot of nature, but we have been going against it. We have not been able to appreciate that, and we have gone with the purpose of making money, 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 and this has caused all these problems. And can we get back to the old ways of living? Maybe we just have to go back 50 years, the way we have our life, and then probably we'll be much better off. That is the essence of this poem. Okay, thank you, Vasi, for giving me the time.
The same question I would like to ask to Dr. Aditya Srinivas.
Thank you, Vasi sir, for giving me this opportunity. See, in the current scenario, if you see initially my 2 minutes reaction, then before even COVID-19, Indian economy was in a mess. See, if we see our January data, our GDP was only 4.5%, which was 6 years low. Our unemployment was 6.1%, which was again at a 30 years low, 30 years high unemployment. Right now, unfortunately, after the lockdown, that unemployment figure is 27%. So basically, what I attribute to this COVID-19 problem, this is the last nail in the coffin. The economy was already in a mess, but then whatever there were minor chances of improvement, this COVID-19 has shut all those doors. So definitely right now our economy is in a major mess with the kind of unemployment at 27%. 8 crore migrant laborers have gone back to their hometowns. So I really doubt how we can bring this economy back on track. And unfortunately, to be very frank on this platform, that government, instead of accepting this entire mess, is busy framing out new words and new terminologies, rather than focusing on the actual problem of how to get back jobs to the people, how to ensure that corporate pays full salaries to the employees. See, I'm very surprised by the corporate sector's behavior that till March 20th, all companies were working. Only for, say, for example, last 10 days of March, April, May, there was a complete shutdown. Then can't we just take care of our people for 3 months? Means it is really shocking that corporates have resorted to salary cuts, removal of people, as if there is no going to be tomorrow. So this is my initial reaction. Right. Vasi, once we go ahead, I'll discuss it more statistics. But one thing is sure, we are in a big mess.
Right, sir. Thank you very much. And in a very short period, you have, put out the all gist of the whole webinar, I guess so. But we will discuss in detail, hopefully. Yes. I would like to request Dr. Shariq Nisar, what is his opinion on the topic when he sees the topic impact of COVID-19?
So thank you very much, Vasi and Rifa Chambar, for managing this program. And I also welcome my co-panelist in today's program. As already hinted by our learned panelist, this COVID actually started with health crisis. It moved on very quickly to become an economic crisis. And from there, it is almost now on the verge of converting these two crises into a political crisis. So if you look at whole scenario, how something which started as a problem of China in the form of COVID-19, where World Bank and WHO seem to be in control. Very soon we realized that neither WHO was really aware of the ground realities and situation, nor the countries in the beginning. And very quickly it covered the whole of Europe in the beginning. And even at that point in time, India as a country which is late started, and that was luck for us, very good luck. Problem in our country started little, but unfortunately, I think despite that, we could not protect ourselves as much as we should have, because the warnings were very clear. But later on, as we speak today, I do not see any major country in the world, any major economy in the world, which is not impacted by COVID. And this is a very unique crisis in the world. Never in the economic history, I think, the world has faced so much crisis at one shot, in one go, at the same time everywhere else. So even 1929 crisis, we know it was mostly of United States America's, North America's crisis, and then some relation to Europe, etc. But first time in the memory or history that we can say, the whole world is facing crisis like this, and this, I'm afraid that if it is not contained, this will lead to bigger political crisis. We are already seeing on our borders. We are already seeing what is happening elsewhere also, and this is likely to impact the economy in future as well. Because when we are talking about like banning certain products of our neighboring country, obviously our dependence on that country economically is huge, and that will not leave us without going unimpacted from those kind of behaviors as well. So at the moment, as you asked me to share my initial feedback, situation is very grim on all fronts: health fronts, economic fronts, as well as political front. This is grim, and God forbid it looks grimmer in as we go along in couple of months from now. Hopefully better sense of humanity will prevail over all over the world, politicians, especially the leaders, because these are times when leadership will be tested. And I hope that world leadership will think through, and they will make sure that there is the cost of these crises is kept to the minimum level. That is the only hope we can have at the moment. Otherwise, when we speak, we do not have even time to assess the quantum of damage as we as on date. We will have to see how much damage it has caused once the pandemic has stopped. It has not, and it is not showing even slower growth. Over to you, Wasi.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our guest speakers. In a brief, you have given a a good overview of the situation. And what emerges from the discussion is that yes, this crisis is real, and this is something which is not only limited to a particular nation, but whole global economies are being affected with that. So continuing with the same thing, I would like to put this question to Dr. Srinivas. As you are aware that a couple of days ago, World Economic Outlook has come up with some report, and IMF has scaled all the global economies on the post COVID what do you call it effect. So in that context, how you see the global economy excluding the India? Why? Because I'm putting that question separately. So I'm just asking how you see global economies in post and during the COVID situation. Dr. Srinivas.
As far as the world economy, yes. Thank you, Vasi sir. See, basically, if we talk of world economy, see, in world economy, especially I track 4 countries: US, Europe, China, and Japan. The reason is that these 4 economies, US, Europe, China, and Japan, they control 60% of the world GDP. So if you see even last 20 years, that the global financial crisis of 2008, it came from USA and it took the world economy into recession. Then 2011 European Union crisis came. Again, there was a recession kind of situation, which was again basically because of European Union crisis, where Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and Spain had failed to repay their debts. The government said failed. It was a sovereign crisis. Then 2015 Chinese economic crisis, where Chinese GDP crashed from 9% to 6%. And again, there was a world economy was under pressure because China is the biggest producer and consumer of commodities in the world. And currently 2020 crisis, this pandemic, again, it has been triggered by China. So basically now what will happen is that these 4 major economies are right now, to be very frank, in a big mess. See, USA, if we see their debt to GDP ratio, it is already 103%. That means the entire economy is loaded with debt capital. China has a debt to GDP ratio of 260%. Highest debt capital in the world has been accumulated by China, and its GDP is already crashed to 5%. Even that figure I doubt. It is actually 3% or even below than that. That will not be a surprise. If you see Japan, Japan has a huge issue of demographics. Highest number of old people are there. The average age of people is 52 years. And that is why demand and consumption has dried out there. And if we see Europe, Europe is a bunch of problems with UK moving out. it will further have more difficulties in establishing itself at the international level. So if we talk of global economy's GDP growth will be either 1% or even less than that. So obviously the world economy is surely in a big mess, especially with all these four major economies having trouble. So as a result, I feel that the world economy will pass through a tough times. US, no doubt, is printing notes. Basically, US Parliament has already, Congress, Senate has approved a $3 trillion of what I can say $3 trillion of economic package. And after that, they have announced another 2.5 trillion for the corporate companies to in which whose bonds also these people will invest. So one thing is very sure, friends, that basically as far as this is concerned, what I can say, this investments of the US economy is concerned, US is concerned, it will flow to liquidity. It will definitely cause lot of liquidity to go into the global markets. But please understand that only liquidity is not going to create demand, because that is a cheap money flow, which will flow into global markets, and that too more of into stock markets. This capital, as it had happened in 2008 also, lot of money from USA had flown back from the world economy to US economy, and again in 2009 those people had invested. If I give you the figures, even in currently, if you see in 2020 also, in the month of March, foreign institutional investors, they withdraw 61,000 crore rupees from Indian stock markets, and our markets crashed by 38%. In the month of April, they were net sellers to the tune of 1800 crores. But in the month of May, the same foreign investors became net buyers, and they pumped in 14,500 crore. And in the month of June, current month which is going on, around 21,000 crore rupees they have invested in our markets. So this is nothing but the cheap liquidity which is flowing from US economy in the rest of the world, as dollar is a global currency. But liquidity alone cannot create demand, because the sentiment is weak, the health problems are there, world healthcare system has totally been battered. And if you see even the way new cases are coming up, it is a big challenge for the world economy to come out of it, and it will take substantial amount of time till we find a proper vaccine, or second, there is herd immunity where the vaccine stops affecting people on a large scale basis. Where the virus stops affecting the people on a large scale basis. So this is something we have to keep it in mind as far as the global economies are concerned. Vasi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srinivas. Continuing to the same question, but in Indian context, I would like to pose this question to Professor Rangarajan, sir, that as I refer to the IMF report, there, if you see, IMF report has downsized the GDP growth for India. So in that context, and even as Dr. Srinivas was saying, that four major players which own 60% of the GDP, which includes China. So if you see China post-COVID or during the COVID situation, it has its GDP has reduced up to 10%. So in that context, what the picture you visualize of Indian economy, Dr. Rangarajan?
Yeah, thanks, Vasi. Actually, unfortunately or fortunately, I am more a behavioral scientist than an economist. So I don't very much believe in these numbers, but I go by the behavior of people. See, we are actually in a war. We are fighting a war. The whole world is fighting a war with an unseen, unbelievable, tiny virus called COVID-19. So in this war, we have to exist. Thousands of people, lakhs of people are dying, even in well-known, highly developed countries like America, Japan, not Japan, Germany, Italy, and most of the even UK. The corona is very, very prevalent there, and people are dying, and they don't know why and how to save them. Under these conditions, we are going to worry about your dollars, which are going to leave behind when you're dead. What use is that? First of all, we need to establish that we can be alive. If we can't be alive, then no amount of wealth is going to save you. Actually, recently we have heard of one Mr. Srinivasan of Sundaram Fitness in Chennai. He died. Not that his driver gave it to him or whatever else had happened. He died. All his goals could not save him at all. Should he be worried about the money that he would have lost because of the 3 months of close down of this factory? Or should he be worried about his life, which is at stake? I'm going to ask this fundamental question: that is it John or wealth? Is it life or money that you are going to worry about? See, all that what you have said is correct. I'm not denying the fact. I'm not denying that what you're saying is economy is going down. It is going down throughout the world. But lives are more important. And if people are not alive, what use is wealth? If you look at that from that point of view, I think it is more important for you to ensure that lives are saved, even at the cost of millions of pounds or rupees or rubles or whatever else. That is my point of view.
Yeah, it seems in the introduction you might have heard that I said saving lives or saving livelihood. So it seems that you support saving lives, right? So
definitely.
I would like to ask
if I'm going to die today because of corona, because my own relatives are dying. My own classmates had a corona, partially escaped. So what do I do?
But people have people also have a different opinion. Means we see in the reports published in the media, various reports published in media, that if you don't save the livelihood, life will definitely go. So I know we are still in confusion, which is important. So I will put this question to Dr. Sharif.
As I said, my background is behavioral science. Unless people are alive, I can't study them. I can't count my dollars.
Yes.
And that too, it goes in crores and crores. I'm sure none of us can count the, 17 lakhs crores that has been spent for the purpose.
Right.
I mean, it will take you years and years for you to count them.
That is why I'm going to an economist and asking that whether saving lives is important or saving livelihood.
I hope he lives to count his money.
Thank you. See, these are two sides of the same coin. For some, life is no doubt ultimate purpose of we all is survival. But whether the corona is the ultimate killer or the lack of option, lack of job, lack of work is the ultimate killer. Now, if you look at scenario in our country, for example, now here almost 90% economy is informal sector. We know that 14 crore people who were in cities, and maybe more or less the number can be disputed. They moved from their cities and places of dwelling to the villages. Now, as a society, we could not provide them assurance that they should be staying back. As a state, we could not make arrangement for them to stay back. And with all whatever they could have in their small bags, on their shoulders, on their cycles, on their rickshaws, they all moved towards villages. What drove them to? Do we think that they are not afraid of their life? They are. But they were more afraid of dying of hunger than before corona could reach them. That is the ground realities. If you look at global scenario also, what stopped Japan not going for lockdown? Do you think that Japanese are not afraid of their life? They are. But they thought in their own opinion that stopping economic activity can kill more number of people than lockdown, complete lockdown or complete shutdown for the fear of corona. That is one. Look at Germany. Do you think that any of these countries except China and in that particular place, Wuhan, it did the kind of lockdown? Look at US, right? Now, look at UK, any country. Can we see that the kind of lockdown that we saw in our country at that time when the cases were barely 500, that any country in the world had that kind of lockdown? Now, if we think that it was good, we do not know. Scientists will keep telling their numbers, but what impact has really happened, and that is very well for us to see here, is that economic impact of the country is much more visible today than the impact of corona in our country. Now, at this situation, when every day we are having almost 20,000 corona cases, we are forced to open today. Why are we open today? Because just we cannot afford to remain closed now. So we have exhausted our capacity to close. We have exhausted our capacity to lock down. And now we are working in an environment where we are having every day almost 18,000-19,000 cases. That is the scenario. So if you look at global strategy, strategically, if you look at any other country, they had a mix of a balance of lockdown, what they call a smart lockdown or having part of economic activities where children and whether elders were asked to stay at home, but labor class was asked to come to the work. And that is how they kept the economic machine running despite this looming crisis of the corona. This is one side. On the other side, if you look at, there are countries who practice very smart lockdown in the sense that wherever cases are going up, they started going. Now, unfortunately, what appears from our country's practice, if you look at our country's policy towards this, it was, in my opinion, I may be wrong also, and I'll be happy to be proven wrong, that we started lockdown much earlier. It was just kind of marathon race, and we exhausted ourselves running so fast in first few kilometer that we are now having the risk of not completing the race. That is the kind of scenario that I see, because even if you look at the proportion of death by corona, yes, there are youngsters dying. There is no doubt about it. But if you look at overall death proportion, it is mostly in favor of younger people, older people, sorry, who are now more exposed because of lack of immune system, because of lack of other things, because of comorbidities, etc. If you look at Indian economic, India's demographic, 60% population is below 35 years.
Yes.
If we had kept working with this smart lockdown.
Sorry to disrupt. Sorry to interrupt you. It seems that you mean to say that yes, both lives and livelihood are important. That is what I can take out from your discussion. Is that right?
Obviously, yes. Dying without food is no less, cruel than dying with corona.
Yes,
death is a death, anyway. Whether it happens through, and a family is ready to take risk of 1 or 2 members, but family cannot take the risk of all members dying together. You can look at, if I'm not able to earn, my whole family is at risk. If I'm suffering from corona, it is only I at risk.
No, you'll give to others. You'll give to others, your family. It's not that you alone will be affected.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll be happy to debate.
I have a case of a relative, Ganga by name, and she got corona and she happily gave it to her husband also. So both of them are on the same bed.
Yes,
same
sir.
hospital, I mean.
Yes, sir. We will again come to you people. Now, I would like to ask Aditya Srinivas, sir. See, as an economist, when you see Indian economy, scenario of the Indian economy, which sectors you feel that are the most and worst hit of this economic, slowdown, and which sectors are there which are, you can say, partially affected by this crisis, and there might be some sectors which might have not affected at all. So, can you please give a brief note on that so that our participant can understand thoroughly for the.
Sure. See, as far as basically our economy is concerned, then 3 sectors are the worst hit sectors. One is an aviation sector, that is airlines, then hospitality, hotels, and tourism. See, these are the 3 sectors which were contributing in a big way to the employment scenario also, and at the same time, they were contributing in the overall GDP growth rate also. So these are the 3 sectors that have been the worst hit for the simple reason that corona spreads when people meet. And in all these 3 sectors, meeting of people is the basic thing required to carry out any business activity. So as a result, what has happened is that government has, the first thing government did was that it stopped entire international airlines, then domestic airlines, then hotels were asked to shut down, restaurants were asked to shut down, and ultimately the tourism was never allowed for a simple reason, nobody would travel in this kind of a situation. So these are the 3 sectors, friends, that have been worst hit, and you can very well see the way the airlines have started reducing salaries, removing air staffs, because there was no scope for the airlines to fly. Even right now, you see the Mumbai airport, which daily which used to have an air traffic of 900 flights per day. That is total arrival and departure 900 flights per day. Today, basically, it is operating at 100 flights per day. So obviously, you can understand the underutilization of the capacity, where again, it has created risk to the jobs and lives of the people. And I would 100% agree with Sharik sir that here, see, the whole question in India is that whether you die due to corona or you die due to poverty and hunger. See, the very fact that 8 crore workers, migrant workers, were on roads, that made the government take the decision that it is better to unlock and face this music rather than allowing people to die with hunger and unemployment. See, in the parliament, Sitaraman, that is our finance minister, had clearly told that India has 63 crore laborers, a country with such a huge labor population and who basically survives on day-to-day earning. For them, why the lockdown created more havoc? Because they did not have food to eat, they did not have money to basically buy the basics. As a result, those people had to face a very tough time, and that is the reason, friends, that ultimately government had to take this call to unlock. Yes, obviously, this unlocking will get more chaos into the economy because infection and other things will rise. But anyways, that is again debatable that whether you want 50 crore people to die due to poverty, hunger, unemployment, or you can take a risk of getting a crore people infected. That is always can always be debated from both the angles. Second, if you see basically certain sectors which I feel which are performing well and which may even perform well is basically pharmaceutical sector, insurance, and financial services sector. See, today, friends, everybody has realized one thing during this corona thing. Everybody has realized that you need to have proper healthcare and medical cover. So that is something very, very vital, and that is why you can see the need for term plan and mediclaim as an insurance products have drastically basically gone up, have drastically increased. So that is one thing is very sure that will be what I can say. That will be what I can say the sunrise sector going ahead. Already the demand of term plans has increased by more than 10-15%, which people normally used to avoid or take it just as a tax saving instrument. So insurance, financial planning are one area, friends, where I feel that yes, lot of demand has already been started created, and post COVID also these sectors will be in huge demand: pharmaceutical, insurance, and financial services. See, pharmaceutical obviously will rule the world now because in any case, India spends only 3% of GDP on healthcare and education, whereas the global average is 10%. Global average spending is 10% of the total GDP. So India will have to create more awareness and will need to have more formal structure when it comes to healthcare system. So that is one aspect. Second, if you basically see financial services, see, during this lockdown, people have realized one thing, that if you are financially sound, which is the segment which was least affected by lockdown, the people who are financially well off. The basic logic comes again here is that people who are financially well off, who did not have much troubles repaying their EMIs and other things, are obviously in a far better situation. So here one thing basically comes across highlights is that financial planning, financial services area will again see huge demand even during COVID and post COVID. One thing, sir, I would like to highlight here, that since I am associated with stock exchange, you will be surprised that during this lockdown, highest number of demat and trading accounts have been opened. One thing, and second, not only that, but even stock exchange has witnessed record increase in the volumes. That is number of people putting trades. So one thing is very clear that people have realized, at least those in the formal sector jobs, that your ability to face any pandemic or any crisis is largely dependent on how financially you are secured and independent. And lastly, I would like to comment that the one of the sectors which will face real tough time is real estate. See, real estate is a sector which has already been in bad shape for the last 4 to 5 years, and post COVID, friends, it will be in a further disastrous situation for the simple reason. See, for the simple reason why it will face all these problems is because if you see post COVID, then this work from home will become now new normal. In fact, companies like TCS have told that 25 to 30% of our employees may work permanently from home by 2025. So that clearly means that companies are no longer in a mood to spend lakhs of rupees on rentals. So commercial real estate along with residential real estate will have a very tough time, friends. And the way unemployment has gone up. See, not only on this platform, but if you have heard my lectures, webinars earlier also, I have been always advocating that the only solution for India to achieve a sustainable GDP growth rate is we need to create more jobs for the people. And unfortunately, government has consistently failed in doing so, and we have not been able to create jobs. Neither we have been able to create a conducive environment for startups. So in this situation, how do you expect India to have a stable economic growth rate? So in a nutshell, if you say these sectors will face a lot of difficulties going ahead also. What I primarily feel about the overall economic situation is that overall, if you think, then India will definitely have a tough time, and these are certain sectors which will have a lot of problems as times to come. And one thing, always remember that going ahead, that in the coming months, 1 or 2 months, you will really feel that as far as basically this is concerned, corona is concerned, it will still spread and it will still go at a higher level. So really, I am worried that the way government is handling, or what plans they have to handle this whole situation, is really something really only
Dr.
time
Srinivas,
can tell.
Dr. Srinivas, sorry to interrupt you. I will come to that point once again to you. Meanwhile, I would like to pose a question
I just completed. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to pose this question to Dr. Rangarajan, sir. See, as you have seen, since 3-4 months, all the education institutions have been closed. So there is a uncertainty regarding the examination and regarding academic year. So in a single word, you say education sector has also been affected very much. So how you see this crisis, whether there will be any reforms in the education sector, or the academics will push back to 6 months or 1 year, one academic year will be lost of the students. Like, how you will see this crisis like that?
Thanks, Vasi. I'm glad that you brought it up, because I've been in the education center for a long time. I've been Dean Director of various B schools and all that. Okay. Now, I just want to make one point very, very clear. I mean, I agree with whatever Dr. Srinivas said. There's no doubt about the numbers that he has given, and the economy is going down. And along with that, because of the lockdown, education system is also affected. But unfortunately, I would say it's fortunately that we are in an opportunistic place where we can totally revive or totally change the system that we have been following for a long time. And that too, thanks to Macaulay, who insists that English is the only language that you should learn and that sort of thing. And then you have been taught to become only clerks and not to become original thinkers and scientists and the thing. In spite of his studies, there have been a lot of people who have done very well in their life. No, there's no doubt about that. But majority of us still think that we have to get a government job, we have to have a stable job, we should have a pensionable job. And then if the job goes, then there's nothing that we can do. I said, this thinking has to change. This thinking has to change and enable more entrepreneurs to come into the picture. And the education system has to be such that students are asked to enable to ask questions. I mean, I find wherever I have gone, I've been gone to at least a dozen places, if not more, where people do not find that it is easy to ask questions in the classroom. And that is suppressed. And if you are asked any question, they just ask you to shut up and sit down. This is the basic thing that is differentiating us from rest of the community, rest of the world community, as far as education is concerned. One thing that we can say, sorry, I've been trying my best to convert particularly management students to become entrepreneurs. But with very little success, as Dr. Srinivas will definitely agree, our environmental system, our government system and the rest of the people do not permit that. Do not permit that because we don't encourage being an entrepreneur. And if you're an entrepreneur, I know it's going to be very difficult to even get married. People say, no, I don't want any businessman to marry my daughter. I want regularly employed, particularly preferably in the government, particularly with your IAS, and particularly if you have done IIT or IIMs, then such people are preferred. A person with SLC or less, and if he has the skill to invent, skill to innovate, skill to produce goods, and they are not really encouraged. So this system, and this is an opportunity for us to change that system and say that to hell with education as it is, and let us change the system and ensure that we learn what is required for living rather than we learn what is required for getting a degree. I think this, should be the focus, and it's the right opportunity for us to exploit this opportunity and ensure that the education system is totally changed. We don't want degrees. We want people to be skilled. We want people to think. We want people to be entrepreneurial, exploit the nature. Whatever is chances or opportunities that are available to us.
Right.
Over to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Rangarajan. Let us move to Dr. Shariq Nisar. I guess he's available there. Dr. Shariq Nisar, sir. So, as Dr. Srinivas was just sharing his views, that the most, affected population section of the population is marginalized people, right, and unorganized sector. So what is your take on that? Means how you see how much seriously these sectors and this group of people or population has affected? Any real-time experiences which are aware of that? Because I guess you are also associated with some company which is providing micro insurance at some slum areas in Mumbai, right? So from your experiences, would like to please share cases with us so that the participant can get an idea of how much this crisis has affected this marginalized section.
Well, as Vasi, this is a very good question and important one, I believe. As I said, people given an option want to kill themselves rather than their families. And economic crisis is one that, drove people away from cities, those who could not think of any assurance from this. What my own assessment, looking at the ground level work that I'm part of, almost 15 to 20 years of hard work that we as a country had achieved in the past in terms of bringing people out of their poverty or bringing people above poverty line has been washed. Almost 2 decades of work. So we, in terms of number of poor, after this crisis is over, we will be, hopefully we'll have right number, we will have right surveys. But what indications are coming is almost 2 decades of, hard work has gone. One very important aspect which poor people are more vulnerable is the health. If you look at, segment-wise population, if you look at ultra poor, somehow they have certain government scheme to back on. For example, Ayushman Bharat, etc. Of course, service quality is an issue. How that is affecting is another issue. How that is working in the ground, rural areas, etc. How people traveled and got benefit from Ayushman Bharat kind of a scheme during lockdown is another area we are seeing that number has been coming down during COVID. Yet to be known only after the lockdown and the whole country is open. But there is a huge segment which is neither covered by government nor covered by the private sector in terms of insurance. Now, in those segments, which is almost 50% of our population, 40%, bottom 40%, let's say, they have some kind of government scheme to fall back on. 10% top, they have private insurance capacity, like Professor Rangarajan and I and other friends who can afford. But what about the remaining 40% population? If one health event happens, this whole family goes in below poverty line. And that is the kind of scenarios we are seeing where, these days, I don't think that, hospitals are minting money like anything. In city like Bombay, I do not know about Chennai, but you can be asked anything about in the range of 100,000 a night to 150,000 a night. And those kind of things, if you pay, you fine, otherwise you go out. And now thousands and thousands of people are now getting treated by staying at their home. We do not know the number of those people also. The number of death that is coming in is hardly 1/3 of total India's death is getting reported in the system. So we are not aware that what is the real ground situation as far as health is concerned. But yes, the kind of signals that are coming out of this loss of job, out of this migrations, reverse migration, out of this health claim, insurance claim. In fact, the insurance claim has come down during COVID. Ayushman Bharat claim has come down during COVID. We know that situation has not improved, but claim has come down because people's ability to claim that amount has been impacted. So, as I said, a lot of grim situation. I hope and pray that sooner we come out of this whole mess, which is obviously human created. I don't believe in that kind of thing at the moment, because it's a whole humanity is in crisis, and it's a very unique and very depressing crisis.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Shariq Nisar sir. Now, as during his views, Dr. Shariq Nisar had mentioned Ayushman Bharat and Atmanirbhar Bharat. So, taking that point out of his discussion, I would like to pose this question to Dr. Srinivas. The government of India has tried its level best to tackle this issue through various packages announced, through various schemes announced, right? Through it has taken few measures on monetary aspects, and even RBI has come up with some schemes and policies. So what is your net assessment of these all measures, particularly taken by the government of India? Do you feel that whatever has been done is enough to come out of with this crisis, or we need to do more? If we need to do more, then on what aspects we need to do more? Can you please list that out? Dr. Srinivas.
Yes, thank you, Vasi, for this important aspect of the discussion. See, to be very frank here, see, the policy measures announced by the government, in policy terms, it may be good, but to be very frank, they have missed the bus. See, for the simple reason, I'll put whole thing in this perspective. See, they have announced a 20 lakh crore rupees package. A 20 lakh crore rupees package has been announced, which covers the farmers, the marginal workers, the migrants, and to an extent SMEs. But do you really think that they are going to receive these benefits? Number one, do you really think that the loan measures announced, the credit facilities offered, is anybody capable of taking loan in this situation? I really doubt. See, we have 6 crore 54 lakh SMEs in India, small medium enterprise, 6 crore 54 lakh. Government has given a 3 lakh crore rupee collateral free loans, which is available to those SMEs who have a turnover of near to 100 crores. So something basically 45 lakh SMEs will be eligible. But do you really think that those even 45 lakh SMEs out of 6 crore 54 lakhs will even try to take a loan, whereas they are already loaded with debt capital, working capital problems, lack of labor? In this situation, why would they create additional financial burden for themselves? So definitely what I feel that the measure announced are more of broad policy nature rather than helping the last man in the queue. Rather, the effective measure could have been what France did. See, to be very frank, France government has directly transferred 9,000 euros into the bank accounts of all businessmen. Straight transfer of 9,000 euros, so that businessman has liquidity. See, today the need of the hour of a poor people is liquid cash, not promises or basically big schemes which does not have any implementation roadmap. Say, for example, if you take, they have announced that 90,000 crore rupees will be given to power distribution companies, DISCOM. But our distribution companies are already in a bad situation. Their balance sheets are bleeding. And whose money are they giving? Ultimately, it is your and my hard-earned taxpayers' money. And out of this 20 lakh crore package, if you frankly see, what has the salaried class got? Nothing. Whereas that is the class who is paying 10% TDS tax, it is paying 30% income tax, it is paying 18% GST. So basically, whose money are you distributing? And why not involve everybody in the process of growth, rather than just focusing on 3 crore people who are actually paying income tax out of a population of 137 crore people? See, we have 137 crore people in India. Only 7 crore people file income tax return. They file, they not even pay. And out of those 7 crore people who file income tax return, hardly 3 crore pay. So something is very this thing, friends, that as far as our economy is concerned, we need to have implementation improved. That is something very vital. And here I have a very strong opinion that rather government could have done. See, they started a Prime Minister's Care Fund. In that Care Fund, as far as my knowledge goes, around 200 crore rupees was received from retail people, that is people like you and me. And around 4,000 crore rupees was received from film star, corporates, and all who's who. They donated some total 4,000 plus crore rupees. My simple suggestion was, why can't this money be straightway transferred to the bank accounts of all those people who had opened during Jan Dhan, or basically whose Aadhaar card is linked with PAN card? All those migrant people, had they been given say 5 lakh rupees, they could have easily stayed where they are and we could have successfully continued the lockdown for 6 months. And this would have really one on two fronts. One, lockdown would have been successful, and at the same time, people would not have to search for food, water, and shelter, and they would not have been forced to walk barefoot on the highways. So basically, these things we have to take it from an implementation perspective, not from an announcement perspective. At the same time, if you frankly see, then in case of Atmanirbhar, see, basically, what are we talking about Atmanirbhar? If you take analysis between India and China, 22% of our entire total imports comes from China. And why we have to do that? Because we are poor in creating any quality manufacturing. See, when I was when I was a child, when I was studying, I have seen television sets of Salora, Onida, and Crown TV. Today, where are those companies? The moment we allowed LG, Samsung, and Sansui, these companies got shut down because they had no quality to fight. So, see, what I am trying to highlight here is that instead of highlighting things, identifying phrases, it is better that government should have focused on how to give money in the hands of the people so that people can spend that money and survive this crisis. As Jack Ma is one of the international personalities. He clearly told one thing, and I really appreciate his frankness, that the only achievement in 2020 is that you are alive. If you live this entire 2020, that is your big achievement. So I don't understand, frankly, sometimes that people sitting in Delhi, why can't they understand the grassroots level reality? Frankly, it amazes me a lot.
So the same question could be asked from the people who are sitting in Delhi, that why can't the people sitting on the ground reality understand the situation at a macro level? So this will go on. There is no a particular answer for this. What could be done in their capacity, they might have done, and what they need to do. Yes, I agree with you that there should be something like direct income support. They should have provided, and this is also this point is also raised by the IMF chief, Ms. Geeta Gopinathan, in her report, that this is the area where India could have done much, but it has not done, because by creating direct income support, they could have holded the demand, which is actually crashed due to, as you said, lack of having income. The people were unable to even get the basic needs fulfilled. So I too agree with that. And further moving to Dr. Sharif Nisar, MSMEs, right? These are the sector where you can say a considerable number of population engaged the services in terms of laborers or salaried people and all the things. So keeping this crisis in view, what could be the potential or real problems MSMEs are going to face, and if you could guide us how these problems can be tackled in efficient way. So we will be on behalf of our participants. I will be thankful to you if you could put your views on this point.
Well, this is a difficult question, see, for the reason that the kind of situation we are in at the moment, and I empathize for the government also, for the reason that the kind of situation and crisis at the moment is, no government can come out of glory. Everybody could have been short of whatever you expect, and the problem currently I identify with this is that there are additional problems that kept the government out of achieving many things that it could have achieved even before the onset of the crisis. We have non-technicians but pliant people at the helm of most of the institutions or most of the places. Now what happens, you cannot have talent and pliant people both at the same time. You want people to comply with you, you want people to follow you, and then you end up risking the organizational credibility.
Exactly.
That was the beginning when we found ourselves. Who is heading ICMR? What kind of people are heading this pandemic war? They are technicians, they are business experts, they are virologists, they are pandemic experts. You can look at. Hardly you see core domain people are at the helm of their respective department. That is a big crisis at the moment for us. Similarly, if you look at economic policy also. You find someone first time in the history not coming from economic background heading central bank. You can say that how does it matter? It does matter. It does matter because credibility of the institution is also dependent on the people who are at the helm of the affair, not only in terms of their integrity, but also in terms of their capability to manage the challenges they come across. Look at MSMEs. MSMEs are feeder to the main economy. MSMEs play a role as a feeder to the big companies. So Maruti, we might be knowing, but Maruti has got lot of suppliers who come in the MSME category, and they provide, feeder to Maruti to do on, and then so there are backward and forward linkages. Our economy is not cut off. Now, the lockdown, what has impacted is that those organizations will hardly find themselves to recoup and come back again on their feet in a very short period of time. Their rentals, their electricity bills, their labor costs, their orders failures, etc., that will take months for people to come up. Now, those people who are running those, I can believe that they can still survive, for the reason that they will have some saving because they were entrepreneurs. They will also be able to go into some saving. For example, if they had 1 year saving and 1 year they don't earn income, they can still survive themselves. But what about people and vendors, even small vendors, those who are feeding those MSMEs, they are almost vulnerable now because their margins were almost on daily basis, weekly basis, fortnightly basis. So it is, actual assessment, as I said in the beginning, is not possible until we have come out of this whole crisis and we go back and look at the damage. What we are doing, what we are trying to do mostly is from our sitting at our home, reading in newspaper, looking at news channels, etc. But they also have limitation to reach to the ground and give us the true picture. But all kinds of information that is available is showing a very, very precarious situation for at least 2 years to come as far as Indian economy is concerned. And the most impacted of that segment, in my view, would be MSME, because their margin levels are very limited. Their capacity to raise capital is very limited. And their ability to tide over a long period of gestation now, at the kind of gestation we have, lockdown gestation, is also very limited. So in my view, this is going to cause a big problem for our MSME. I hope that we are able to come out of this situation. My prayers and hope are always there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Shariq Nisar. Now, as we see, there are salary cuts, layoffs. Companies are, avoiding new recruitments. So in these circumstances, the professionals, freshers, job seekers, they are, in very worried situations. So from a management perspective or a behavioral perspective, as Dr. Rangarajan sir has said, I would like to, put this question to you: how to manage, our financial, lifestyle at the time of this crisis, this type of crisis. So how it should, affect, how to balance this? Can you please guide us on this aspect so that the participants, those who are, youngsters who are following you, so they can get something.
Thanks, Vasi. Thanks. Acha, I just want to give these 3 words. I mean, my whole approach will be based on that. Number 1 is discipline. See, earlier we were talking about Japan and other countries, but they are highly disciplined. In the sense, they have taken the precaution, they know what to do, they know what not to do, they don't do anything that they are not supposed to do. I mean, whereas discipline in India is, hardly a matter of, worth mentioning about. And second thing that I want to talk about is essentials and non-essentials. See, essential is what is roti, kapada or makan. These are 3 essential things that you need to have. Otherwise, you cannot live. If you don't have roti, obviously you cannot live. If you don't have kapada, obviously your this thing is insane. And if you want to protect your body and soul, you need a makan. At least makan means not a very big bungalow or a flat. At least something which will protect you from sunshine and rainfall. Now, if we concentrate on these 3, and as I already said, on education and health, we have failed to do so in the past 70 years. Now, after Modi ji has come over, there is some more increased focus on skill-based education and job-oriented education. Number two, the health point of view has been totally missed out. I think somebody else also mentioned the percentage of money that we spend on health, either individually or from the government, is very, very little. So this is one thing, these two things we need to worry about during this COVID things. Another point I just want to mention is Corona has been a real great eye-opener for most of us. It has told us what you have been doing so far is not correct. We have been damaging the environment, we have been damaging the ecology, we have been killing a lot of species, and we have been doing a lot of damage to the environment. And by focusing on things which are not warranted, I'm telling you simple things. Why should aeroplane be called a air bus? I mean, as if thousands of people have to travel from one point to another point. It's totally unnecessary. If they go there, they stay there. They don't keep going up and down every year, paying a hell lot of money and wasting so much of aero fuel. Number two, what we are also talking about is in terms of communication. It's not necessary. I remember the good old days when we used to get a letter once in a fortnight from my father who was staying in Bangalore when I was studying in Ahmedabad. That's all. Here we are spending hours and hours on the SMS, on WhatsApp, on talking and video chatting and all these things, which again is totally unnecessary. I mean, these are all non-essentials. But essentials are those where we need our bread, butter and jam. We need our food. We need rice. We need dal. We need the vegetables. And we have again failed to appreciate the effort that farmer is putting in. And why should anybody die in the farming sector? Because farming are the people, farmers are the people who provide us food. And they should be cherished. They should be worshipped. They should be given all the facilities. And we don't do that. We just give them very highly capital-intensive agriculture compared to what other countries are doing. Agriculture must be cheap. Agriculture must be useful. Agriculture must produce enough profit for the farmers to be able to survive. Not just 1 year, but they must be able to survive for a long time. We don't do that.
Yes, sir. So I got your point because we are running out of time. So I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No problem. No problem.
Your simple words is be disciplined, be balanced in your lifestyle. Don't keep high ambition. Divide your all desires in necessity, comfort, and luxury. Is that right? Thank you very much, sir.
Just give me 30 seconds. Give me 30 seconds. I just want to say one thing. This is a poem again I got from somebody, and which says, comparing about 50 years back and what is happening now. Andru Kurainda Varumanam, Nerenda Nimadi. I remember these days because I've been living in this saying. We have very less income, but we have a lot of happiness. Indru Nerenda Varumanam, Kurainda Nimadi. We have lots and lots of money. I'm sure even the people 20-year-old are getting lakhs of rupees in the IT department. But ask them if they're happy, hardly. Andru Kai Visi Narandom, Indru Kai Pesiyodan Nadakkirom. So much so we even fall into ditches. Because we don't take care of ourselves, we don't see what is happening before us. Andru padittal velai, indru padippade velai. You look at the students now. For them, it's a big job for them to come to the college. And you ask them to read anything, sir, can you give you notes? That's the way they are asking. Andru odinam vaitrai neraika. That means we were running for getting our food. But now, odigirom vaitrai kuraika. No? I hope you understand that. Andru odavai marundu, indru marunde odavu. This is what is happening. Can we change this? That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Participants, please note, just after this last question from the moderator, we are opening this session to participants. You can put your question directly to the panelists. Please, whenever you are asking a question, be brief. Introduce yourself with just name, place, and to whom you are putting this question. And question should be very short and very brief. So, after this question, please raise your hand. Our admin panel, will allow you to ask the questions. Now, last question to Dr. Srinivas from my side. As you have said, China is one of the biggest, exporter of services to India. India is importing so many services from China. But if you see throughout this crisis, there is major shift in the global economy, and various countries are reluctant to make China right now as a business partner. So many industries are moving out of the China, businesses are moving out of the China, projects are moving out of the China. So during this crisis, on a positive note, can India take an opportunity and attract all these, business and services which is going out from the China? Whether it come to India, can we make such thing happen? Is India has the potential to make to utilize this opportunity and become a world leader? Dr. Srinivas.
Thank you, Vasi, for this important question. See, as of now, if you please understand that China is the only economy in the world where 53% of the GDP comes from manufacturing.
Right.
Sorry, you may go to any particular country in the world. I have traveled more than 15 nations. I have found made in China label everywhere. So first of all, see, just basically by thinking that we will be able to replace China and start manufacturing everything on our own, or even the global economies will be able to do so, is more of a wishful thinking rather than agreeing with the facts and figures. See, as of now, if you frankly see, even today, China occupies a very important place in the supply chain. Forget the world economy. If we talk about our own India's economy, then in the electrical equipment segment, we import 31% of the total import from China. The overall entire imports are 22%. In the chemical segment, we import 58% chemicals from China. Plus, China is the base of around most of the widely used commodities in the world. Maximum deposits are found there. So as of now, yes, companies and countries may be reluctant to deal with them, and they may be trying to shift their base. But one thing is very clear, that just by thinking it will not happen. And especially in India, because to be very frank, doing business, that ease of doing business in our economy is only on paper, not at the grassroots level. Whenever you deal with any government agency, government departments, you will come to know that how difficult it is for a common Indian retail person to deal with. Forget one. I'll give you my own example and you will be utterly shocked. My own family members, one of whom is a bedridden person, a person who just cannot go out. He was basically made and for citizen the PAN card department. Can you believe it? A person who cannot walk has been made as a foreign citizen. So when I wanted to link his Aadhaar card and PAN card, a foreign citizen hai. And to just get that mistake rectified, again, there was no mistake from my side. The PAN card, Aadhaar card were issued years and all proper documentation and everything. God knows what mistake they did in their computers and servers. But to just get that thing rectified, I had, because of my BSc connection and by directly contacting the depositories MD, I was able to get this done. So just imagine that in our case, if we have to run pillar to post, what is the scenario for a common man and for a normal businessman? Secondly, even if you want to set up a business here, lot of approvals are required. So we can achieve this thing. I say I don't say not possible, but to be very frank, at the grassroots level, lot of companies may move out from China. But how many of them may be willing to set up their business in India? And actually, when they set up, really, which only will tell. But figures are an indication that we may not be able to have much success in that particular terms. Vasi.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Srinivas. What I get from your response is that yes, there is a potential, but we need to work hard more and more to become an alternative business partner for global economies. Is that right? I guess so. Now
Yes,
let us take
correct.
first question from the participant audience. Mr. Fazlur Rahman is raising hand. Unmute.
Vasi Saab, you can unmute him. You are co-host. I am trying from here, but it is not happening.
Yeah.
You can unmute.
Mr. Fazlur Rahman, are you able to connect? Mr. Fazlur Rahman? I think he is unable to connect to us. Meanwhile, we get some questions from the participants. I would like to ask Dr. Rangarajan sir, that we have been listening about this sustainable development, CSR, inclusive growth. So in your view, at the time of crisis such as COVID-19, how these concepts can help us to deal with this crisis in efficient way? So how important these concepts are right now in crisis? Dr. T. Rangarajan, sir.
Yeah. I got it. Let me just be very brief. And sustainable development is a word, and unless it's put into practice, it remains as a word. For example, I mean, the good old days. Again, I'm going back to my old saying. We used to have a banana tree in our garden, and all the wastewater would go there. And that gets recycled. Banana needs a lot of water, and it doesn't matter where it is wastewater or waste good water. And that grows, and it gives you a lot of fruits. And banana fruits are right now very good for COVID-19. That's what is told again. See, this total recycling of things. Whatever you spend goes to the cycling process rather than going to a waste paper basket or going to the garbage. I mean, this is one thing that we can talk about if you're really talking about sustainable development. What cannot be sustained is waste. We have learned a lot of bad things from America by using a lot of plastics, using use and throw things which cannot be assimilated by the economy, by the environment. So this is one of the basic problems. Can I talk to myself and say how much of waste do I produce, and is it really being recycled or is it being junked into the waste paper yard? I mean, in the garbage system. I mean, this is one thing that we need to talk about when you talk about sustainable. What is sustainable is what can be done for a long time rather than what can be done in a very short time. And we think 50 years of our lives has gone in doing unsustainable development activities. Fortunately, India has been a little lagging in this, whereas all the other developed countries have gone much farther ahead in causing a lot of damage to the ecology and saying that unsustainable development has taken place. Nuclear waste, for example, and plastics, for example, and many other things that all of us know about. So dumping things into the sea, and so much of marine life is getting wasted. And even now, the corona victims are being dumped into the sea. I do not know how much of damage these corona-infected bodies are going to cause to the marine and other ecological beings. And so many species are become extinct. Why? Because we think that the whole world is only for mankind. This is one thing that we need to change our view. And you should think that it is for all the, as I said, all the Jivarasis, all the living beings. Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu. The whole world, all the beings have to become happy. And there is a cycle, food cycle. And we need to follow that food cycle. So you are going to be food for something else. Something else is going to be food for you. And unless the cycle is maintained, unless all the species and their cycle are maintained, we are not going to have a sustainable development at all. That's my point of view.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. There is a question to Aditya, sir. Is it time to move on from globalization and capitalistic economic system? Dr. Aditya Srinivas, sir.
Basically, having a capitalistic economic system is not a problem. Only thing is that capitalism should be there with human face. That is something very much required. Human face is very important of any economic reform when we do, or when we are focusing on the profit of the private sector. See, private sector and capitalism will reward the people who have talent, and obviously that is what the need of the hour is. But at the same time, that thing should have human face. That means those weaker section, vulnerable section, if they are also being given proper kind of protection, or organized jobs, organized sector, then obviously they will also survive, and there will be an overall growth and development. So what I feel is that as far as capitalism is concerned, yes, it is required, because that motivates private sector to work hard, and at the same time, it is better that we get the best talent. But at the same time, it is very important that the weaker, vulnerable section is also taken care of, and that is why we need to have a balanced approach. Vasi sir.
Thank you very much, sir. One question is to Dr. Shariq Nisar, sir. Dr. Shariq Nisar, sir. One of the participants is asking whether CSR has helped, in dealing with this situation, because so many NGOs and trusts and societies have come up, with support, essential supports to the, migrant workers and those who struck somewhere in all the cities. So CSR something which has helped this section of the population. So how important CSR is in this context?
Yeah, that's a very good question actually. I think in these crisis time, we have also seen some of the best faces of humanity. So while we saw that laborers and migrants are having trouble moving from their places to their natives, government's inability to be able to come to support of such large number of people, we have also seen such huge number of people coming forward on their own to help them. So that has been a very good thing to watch, that people feeling pain for their fellow human being, and many of the people in cities have come forward. Many organizations have come forward in cities like Mumbai and Bangalore. I am aware of. I know in Bangalore there are a bunch of youngsters who are just making last rites for the dead people who have been left by their own family member. Family member fearing corona, they have left their deads, and these bunch of youngsters are doing their last rites. There are people coming forward and making burial arrangement, etc. There are people coming forward and making food arrangement, etc. I know a couple of corporates who have spent a good amount of money in these times to support and to take live food and other arrangements. Robin Hood Army, we have been using Robin Hood Army to take food to the areas which are falling in red zone, where it was hardly possible for normal people to be able to reach there, but we were getting call from those areas that we do not have any food in our home, what should we do? So those kind of good things have been observed, and I'm very hopeful that humanity will learn lesson that across people from various religions have come forward to help other people.
Sorry for interrupting you. For interrupting you, because a couple of questions are there. One question is, due to the excessive pumping of currency, is there will be any impact on demand and inflation and deflation kind of thing? This question is put to Dr. Srinivas.
Yes.
Because government is taking so much, measures on monetary aspect. So, though it is a hypothetical question, but we will be thankful if you could.
Sure. See, basically, if you see the current scenario, as far as all global central banks are concerned, all central banks have reduced their, opened their liquidity taps. See, right now, the only solution, what the central banks globally are thinking and governments are thinking, is that if you push liquidity into the system, the recovery will be much faster. And India is also not an exception. That is why if you see that RBI has reduced the repo rate to 4%, it is even at the lowest level after the global crisis of 2008. In fact, bank interest rates have gone down and loans are available at very attractive interest rates. So basically, liquidity measures have already been initiated by our central bank also. But here, as far as India is concerned, the issue is that I don't see currently inflation going up because there is no demand. This time, there is not a problem of supply, but there is a genuine problem of demand itself. See, so many people have lost their jobs and there is so much of economic uncertainty among the people that people find it very difficult basically right now to go and do any kind of wishful spending. Rather, even you will be surprised, sir, I have been doing FDPs on webinars where even 100 faculties are attending. Now, they are relatively in a secured kind of job as compared to the corporates, but even they are scared to spend money. So if a person who has a stable job, stable outlook, if he is scared, just think of corporate sector people where there is absolute no job security or no job stability, and forget the what I can say, the smaller and the weaker, the marginal section.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srinivas. I guess I got your point. It means you say that yes, there could be, but not in short run.
No,
right?
No, not in short.
Last question I would like to pose to the Dr. Srinivas. Some of the participants is asking whether Islamic finance, because you are also associated with this subject, because whether Islamic finance can play any role in this type of crisis. In one line, in less than 30 seconds, if you could answer, I will be thankful to you because we are running out of time.
Thank you, Wasi. Yes, the whole purpose of Islamic finance is sharing of risk and reward. If you look at interest-based system, it doesn't share the risk. It only takes the reward, right? So when you have sharing of risk and reward, when you have linkages of risk and reward, a good time, everyone enjoys. Bad time, everyone shares the burden. that is the philosophy of Islamic finance, and I think given 30 seconds, I can't say beyond this.
Thank you very much. Now we are left with only 5 minutes, and 3 guest speakers are there. In I say 1 minute, if you could give a message to all the participants. Let me inform you that around 120-130 people have joined us from different parts of India, and so many questions I am getting here, but due to the time constraint, I cannot take all the questions. I am apologizing all the participants, and I am thankful to your enthusiasm. In 1 minute, please message. 1 minute, you have to give a message to all the participants, all the 3 scholars, starting from Dr. Rangarajan sir.
Thank you, Vasi, for giving us the opportunity of sharing our views. I think I've been quite different from what the others have been saying, and what I again go back to saying is, let us take care of our lives first, and that is the most important thing. If you are going to be there tomorrow, then you can talk about what to eat and what not to eat. But if you are not going to be alive, your economy is going to shambles, and the whole world is suffering. So we are also suffering along with that. This is a war time, so it needs war preparation and war sort of activities, and we have to take care of ourselves and listen to the government and be in the house, be safe, stay at home, and don't go out and get COVID for yourself as well as for others also. Thank you. And I wish you all the best.
Dr. Srinivas.
Sir, thank you, Vasi, for giving us this opportunity. See, my message to all the participants, or rather request, is that in this testing times, the only solution is that one human should help other human. That is the only thing. We should feed as many poor people as possible. We should try to donate money to organizations which are serving others. At least in my personal capacity, I am doing it in a big way. Whatever is possible for others. That is the only thing, and the best how we can serve mankind. Thank you, dear.
Yeah, Dr. Sharikni sir.
Yeah, I was going to talk about, and we must praise Dr. Aditya Srinivas for raising dozens of orphans at his own cost. He helps dozens of orphans.
It's very pleasing.
Yeah, and he makes sure that he has a breakfast every Sunday with those orphan boys and girls, young children. So very nice of you, Dr. Aditya Srinivas. And I'm very pleased to share. I know you are a bit shy of sharing this, but this is a platform people should know about the good work that you are doing.
Thank you.
And yes, these are time for crisis, but crisis brings best out of humanity as well. Whenever crisis has happened, we have seen that humanity has come up in its own style, and
very true.
Humanity to come together. Irrespective of their caste, color, creed, religion, government affiliation, government support, or government oppose, whatever policy, we have to look at our neighbor, we have to look at our nearest person, relative, and make sure that they are able to tide over this crisis period. If we are able to do that, I am happy that Professor Rangarajan Sahab also will be happy, that those who can survive on their own and those who can help others also survive, these are the good time to support the less vulnerable.
Right, sir. Thank you very much,
Agreed.
sir.
Agreed.
Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of all the participants, RIFA Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I would like to thank the guest speakers as well as the participants who have took part in this webinar and made it a great success. 3 points. Yes, this crisis is real, but no need to panic. Be united, be positive, try to deal it with in a positive sense, change the lifestyle, learn from the crisis, and go ahead. It is not a permanent problem. Sooner or later, this crisis will go, and India will definitely emerge with a economic zeal and become a economic leader on the global financial market. This is the takeaway from this webinar. I hope so. There are a lot of questions from the participant, but I personally and sincerely apologize because of the time constraint. We cannot take it. But hopefully on the 1 or 2nd day, we will inshallah take this opportunity to address your questions and some other seminar and some webinars. I once again thank you very much for all of you, especially our guest speakers on one call. They have confirmed their participation and guided us in this key topic which we are facing right now. Thank you very much. Be united, be positive, stay at home, stay safe. Jai Hind. Assalamu alaikum.
Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.